The only thing more misunderstood than scales in music is my high school obsession with the Powerpuff Girls. It represented a time in animation when the writing actually meant something. But today we're gonna learn about combining different scales in a way that makes more sense, right? I think a lot of times as you see a scale, we're gonna do this in the key of D today, right? Where it's like, all right, D, major, scale. It's like, maybe that means I used it to solo. It's like, okay, that is true, you do use scales to solo, but I think they make way more sense as chords, and especially being able to combine multiple instruments together. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about scales, we're gonna talk about doing an electric guitar, and then adding maybe a bass line to it, and then just kind of like making music out of all of them, all right? So this video is sponsored by Sweetwater today, specifically Warwick, and this incredible bass. I did an unboxing on this bass. This is probably the nicest instrument I own now. I have a personal connection with Warwick because I made a ton of friends at their factory in Germany a few years ago. I talked about that with my buddy Samurai Guitarist in a video that I will link if you guys are interested in that. But first, we're gonna do 2 chords and 1 scale, and we're gonna learn a lot of music theory and have a great time doing it, right? So, what chord do you think we're gonna do in D major? We're gonna do D major 7, okay? So, let's really quick go through the notes in the D major scale as scale degrees. All that means is the number that they occur in the scale. So if we talked about it, it would look like this. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, the octave, or 1 again. So D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Now the nice thing about doing it in this way is you kind of get this little symmetrical shape here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The frets would be A string, 5, 7, 9, D string, 5, 7, 9, G string, 6, 7. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play a chord, D major 7, which is just a combination of the 1, 3, 5, and 7 notes. That's how chords are built, okay? If that's something you've never heard about, maybe consider joining my Patreon or just look up some music theory videos on YouTube. But basically what that is we have 4 notes. I wanted to specifically choose a 4-note chord to do this example in. And D major 7 is just gonna be the 1, right? Literally the 1 chord in this key, and we're gonna have this go to a G major 7, okay? So the same type of chord in this key, but there's gonna be a twist because just wait till the end. Spoiler alert. No spoilers. No spoiler alert. So we've got this right here. D major 7 to G major 7. I'm gonna quick make a guitar loop and then we're gonna talk about how you can maybe combine the notes in that key to make it sound musical. So we got this. D. Okay, so we've got a D major 7 to a G major 7. Now I can just solo over this in the pentatonic scale. Which is all well and good, but what I want to do is I want to take these scale degrees and then talk about how we can kind of make something sound a little more musical that fits together, all right? So for this, I'm gonna grab the bass. Now, the thing about bass guitar, if you've never ever experienced bass guitar, is standard tuned is the exact same as the lowest 4 strings on a guitar. So E, A, D, G. I love the sound of this bass. Every time I just hear that, it's like, so good. So the exact same thing applies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so D major. Now, what I think is really perfect about having a bass to complement your guitar playing is I feel like it makes you understand scales in a different way. So now when I play that loop, I can just play over the D chord. Okay, and now what that is coming from the exact same scale, but I'm choosing when to switch chords. Now, the thing about bass, if you're intimidated by it, is usually you don't really play chords on a bass. Now you can, but it just takes up such a big amount of sonic space to do. I think it actually really sounds beautiful to kind of play solo bass like that, but when you're accompanying a guitar, you really need to kind of like use your music theory, right? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a groove, a bass groove, based off of that D major 7 chord. So again, the 5th fret on the A string is gonna be our root note, and then if we were to spell the chord out, a D major 7 would be a 1, 3, 5, 7, okay? So D, F sharp, A, C sharp. And again, spelling chords is super important. I think it might be the most important thing in really understanding how music works together. Just real quick recap on this. The way that you'd make a major chord is you'd take the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes from the major scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you want to make a major 7 chord, it's 1, 3, 5, 7. Okay? So I can just kind of play around that with that D chord. 3, 5, 7. Okay? But the thing is, if I just do that in order, it sounds like an arpeggio, which sounds like you're practicing. Okay? Which is great. 1, 3, 5, 7, 8. Great way to practice, but a lot of times if you just do things in order, it sounds more mechanical than it is musical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 of those 4 notes, but I'm going to play them in a way that is much easier. So what I'm going to start is with my root note. There's my 1. Instead of going to the 5 higher, I'm going to go to the 5 below. Okay? So 5 below, aside from being where I get most of my groceries, is it's going to be just a string lower than your root note on a bass. That's the cool thing about bass guitars is there's no B string unless you get like a 5-string bass. So the guitar maintains its intervallic tuning, I suppose, all the way through. So if this is my 1, my 5th below is going to be right there. And then the same thing with major 7. Instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I can go just back a fret. So 1, 5, 7, 1. Instead of 1, 3, 5, 7, 1. Okay? Now, what that allows me to do now is I can maybe just make a groove like that. And that, to me, sounds more of like a cool, like, bass groove. 1, 5, 7, 1. And again, that's more of like riding a musical wave is how I kind of perceive that, right? And all it is taking those chord tones, those notes that are in the chord, and then being aware of where they exist on a guitar, right? I'm gonna actually go back to the guitar in just a second, but I want to show how I did that same thing for the G major 7 chord, okay? So we've got D major, 1, 5, 7, 1. Now I can do the same thing on G, all right? I remember that major 7 chord was our 2nd chord in that progression. So now I can kind of go by the same logic, 1, 3, 5, 7, 1. Building the arpeggio from there is the same way to find the same notes across chords, just starting on a different root note. But now because I'm rooted on the E string instead of the A string, I can't go a 5th below, I have to go a 5th above. So now I'm just playing those same numbers, 1, 5, 7, 1, 1, 5, 7, 1. Okay? So when I get to that G, I have to go to the 5th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 5. And the nice thing about the major 7 is always just 1 fret behind the root note. So that's how that kind of accompaniment will be made. So 1, 5, 7, 1, 1, 5, 7, 1. 1, 5, 7, 1. And then the way to walk it back to the chord, I'm just arpeggiating it all the way back. I'm walking through the arpeggio to get back to D. That's how these things are always connected. And I can't stress that enough. Like, chords connect music in such a profound way from an educational standpoint that everybody should know them, right? Now, I can do the same thing just on one guitar. I don't need a bass guitar. You should definitely get a bass, and if you do get a bass, get it from Sweetwater because they're the best and they support my videos all the time. But you can do the same kind of vibe on just a solo guitar, right? Like, but now I've lost my rhythm, right? The nice thing about having 1, 5, 7, 1, being able to do it that way is great. You can get away with it on guitar, and a really great exercise to do is to turn that 1, 5, 7, 1, that bass progression, or that root note, that single note progression, into a chord progression. And that's what's really cool about knowing your chord degrees, because there's only 7 of them, right? Your scale degrees, there's only 7 of them. And you can turn each one of those into its own chord. So the 1 in the key of D is D major. The 5 would be A, right? So you can make that an A major. The 5 chord is a major chord. The 7 chord is this one right here, this half diminished chord right here. So 4, 5, 4, 5 would be how I would play that if I just played that as a chord. So now I can go 1, 5, 7, 1, 1, 5, 7, 1, chords. Okay, a little tricky because you're kind of doing these really quick hand shapes, but it's not impossible. I think it's a really great way to challenge yourself. And also you can find ways around this where you can do it like that. What I did here is I just took that first chord, and then I took the 5th in there, and then I kind of kept that same chord, but playing the note lower, that 5th below. You don't have to change the whole chord every time. You can kind of just use an inversion where now I just change the bass note of my chord and then change the whole chord there. I mean, you can do the same thing. Now I'm just changing the lowest note in my guitar chord to kind of create more of a vibe. And that all came from that. We do the same thing with this chord. And again, I think that sounds really cool. It's like, what did I do there? I just went from G's point of view now in the same key. 1, 5, 7, 1. Now I'm just picking a different chord voicing. That's why it's great to know all of these different chord voicings, because I can go 1 as the major 7 chord, 5. I'm just kind of getting crazy, making a D9, 7. Now it's F sharp major, or F sharp minor 7. Again, I can play it as a minor 7 chord. I can play it as a diminished chord like I did the first progression. But basically, as long as you keep that root note intact, try auditioning different chords and cycling them in and out just to see how it sounds. We could even, like, it shouldn't be major at all. That 7 should never be major in this key, but we could try it. Try it with a D. I just did a major chord on top of every single root note, but that came from spelling out the scale, and there's no soloing going on here. It's really just comping, and I think that is something that every musician should really know and understand, okay? Now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna keep that same loop, but I wanna go to the bass, and now I wanna make it something more mode specific, all right? Now that can be a very scary term for musicians when they hear of like the modes, right? All that means is you're on a different scale degree, okay? When I'm jamming on that D, or the G, I'm playing a 1 to 4 chord progression. D is 1, D, E, F sharp, G is 4, right? So I can do it as simply as playing a root note, a root in a 5th, or the groove. Root, 5th, 7, or I go. Okay, so there are two different things that I was doing there, right? Once I kind of got a little busier, which don't always do. Don't do that by default. Some people are just busy by default. Make it mean something. That's when you can kind of play around maybe into the scale, the key a little bit more, right? So now I'm just kind of thinking of these numbers that I have under my fingers. Maybe I'm kind of gravitating towards the chord tones. That's why those arpeggios make sense. But again, that sounds a certain way. That kind of sounds like an arpeggio, which is great, but maybe you want to switch it up. So now I'll just kind of go around in the other notes in the key. Okay, so that was kind of like, all right, what was going on with the G as compared to the D? All right, so in the D major scale, I have that tried and true scale that we all know and love that we use over any of those notes over that, right? I can go 1, 1, 5, 4, 1, 4, 1, 1, 1, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to whatever. It's kind of that was interesting, me trying to like actually say the note while I was playing it, but that's all well and good. All the notes in the major scale work. Now that's the major mode, the Ionian mode, the one mode. Now when I go to that 4 chord, technically, this is the Lydian mode. All that means is I'm playing the notes in the key of D starting on a G. So now I've got G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, back to G. Okay, so there's one difference from an intervallic standpoint, the space between these notes, right? See if you can tell what it is. Here's D, and here's G. Okay, it's the 4th note. In the 4th mode, 1, 2, 3, Lydian has a sharp 4. Right? So this note right here, G to C sharp, is the distance. That's what makes this sound special. This is the special part of that mode, right? If I were in the key of G, I'd have a C natural note in there. But I can use that to kind of create a different sound over how I'm choosing to accompany or comp that chord, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna really focus on what makes that G chord special for this. D. Okay, so you can kind of hear when I go G, G, C sharp. It wants to go to the D note. 1, 1, 4, 5. 1, 1, 4. You got to resolve it, right? Now you don't have to. It's totally fine to do that, but that's why you won't hear these played together, but you can kind of hear them like that. Now that makes a lot more sense in G's position of the chord progression, right? I think another really cool thing is using it as a transition home to the 1 chord, right? See, watch how I use that C sharp to kind of get back home. Okay, see how it kind of bum, 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 bum. You could walk it straight up into the next chord. And a lot of times when you're taking a bass line for a walk, that's what you're doing. You're really just going through the scale into the chord. You can do the same thing going from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. We can go either forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, or we can go backwards, D, C sharp, like that, right? There's a bunch of different ways to make these connections, but I think seeing a bass guitar accompanying the chords on a regular guitar, if you're an electric or acoustic guitar player, is really a great way to start incorporating all these notes and kind of seeing the scale shapes in your head, right? Because something like that is like a really great, I think that's just a great example of like how a bass player would think versus how a guitar player would think, and how knowing both is really helpful to kind of, like that's not really a chord progression, like a 1, 5, 7, 1 that naturally kind of comes into a guitar player's head. But when you think of like a groove like that, I think it really will enhance your guitar playing in general. So anyways, just wanted to kind of, I really just wanted an excuse to play bass, because playing bass, especially playing bass live, and I'm counting making a looper pedal video at home by myself as playing bass live because I'm putting it on the internet. And playing bass live is my favorite thing to do. I used to kind of just play, you know, small gigs on bass, and it was the best. You just have to bring the bass guitar and a cable. Usually that's it. You barely need a pedal board. Most of the time you don't even need to bring an amp. Bass is the way to do it. So if you are interested in bass, consider getting the greatest bass on earth. Like, this thing is just so awesome. I feel like seeing it on video does not do it justice, but this is like such a cool, you know, boutique level master built instrument from Warwick. So thank you so much to them for sending it over. Thank you to Sweetwater. Anything you guys get, please consider using my affiliate link through Sweetwater, because it shows that you guys are watching the videos, and keeps them coming. So, like I said, if you have any questions or comments, hit me in the comment section. Otherwise, I will talk to you next time. Thanks a lot.